Hey guys, Filmsuit here. I just got done watching this independent film called Being Flynn, which had a small theatrical release back in March and has been out on DVD for a little while now. Anyway, so it's a drama. It's actually based on a memoir called Another Bullshit Night in Suck City by Nicholas Flynn. And so the premise is Paul Dano, he plays the writer of the memoir, Nick, and he's a troubled soul. He's addicted to drugs, and he's a heavy drinker, and he doesn't know what he wants to do in his life, and he knows he has a gift for writing, but he chooses not to follow it because of his estranged father, Jonathan, played by Robert De Niro. And Jonathan is a very arrogant and delusional writer who believes that he's the greatest writer in the world and in history. So, and Nick doesn't follow his footsteps because he doesn't want to build up an ego like him. And however, they collide after having seen each other for 20 some odd years, when Nick begins working at a homeless shelter, and he meets Jonathan, who has recently become homeless after his landlord kicks him out of his apartment, and he loses his job due to alcoholism and his angry rants at his customers or his passengers. Yeah, and so Jonathan just keeps coming into this shelter day after day, which begins to drive Nick insane and bring out all his repressed anger. And while Jonathan becomes increasingly unstable and increasingly delusional, thinking that he's going to be the greatest writer in the world, that he's going to have this good job in Florida, and yeah, it just becomes a movie about Nick trying to balance out his own demons as well as dealing with his troubled father. I will say the premise of this movie had potential. I will say that there was potential, and Paul Dano is fantastic in this movie. I've always liked his work, and he does very well. And Robert De Niro, this is his best performance in the last 10 years, I would say. This is one of his finest performances in a while. Like, he's gone downhill since like the mid 2000s, but no, he's done his best to return to top form here, but still the movie itself is not top form compared to Taxi Driver, Casino, Goodfellas, Heat, Raging Bull, Godfather Part 2, King of Comedy. I'm going on and listing how great Robert De Niro used to be. Anyway, yeah, De Niro does well here, and it was cool to see him play crazy and unstable, because that's what he's best at. He's best at playing crazy and unstable. However, his character becomes really redundant and repetitive after a while. Like, in the first half of the movie, he's we get that he thinks he's the best writer in the world. We get that he thinks he's going to write a masterpiece, and we get that he thinks he has all these goals lined up for him. But after the second half, where he's just repeating it over and over again, it just becomes tiring. And also, spoiler alert, Paul Dano, his character Nick, and he meets this girl at the shelter who he forms a love interest with, played by Olivia Thirlby, and they break up halfway through the movie due to Nick's reckless behavior, and it's implied in the end of possible reconciliation. But in the last 5 minutes of the movie, we get thrown a curveball where Nick introduces Jonathan to his new wife, who was never even introduced in the movie at all. It's like, okay, where did she come from? How did they meet? And that was very frustrating. Actually, the last 5 minutes really irritated me. Not just in that way. It irritated me for a lot of reasons. Like, by the end of this movie, I felt like it was just a very pretentious, overloaded, and unresolved movie about an unstable artist and an artist who's afraid. Like, Paul Dano, like, his character resolves everything in the end. Like, by the end of the movie, he's made peace with all his demons. He stopped abusing drugs and alcohol. He's began a successful writing career. Like, he settles down, and he actually, yeah, like, he's redeemed himself. He's become a good person, and like I said, he's become stable and at peace. But Robert De Niro, it's like his character, again, spoiler, he gets a new apartment, he gets a new job, and yet he's still the same unstable, arrogant, delusional writer he was in the beginning. And it's like, really? You're supposed to be the one who gets redeemed between you and Nick. Like, Jonathan should have been the character who was going to go through a bigger redemption than Nick. And that's not the way it turned out, and that also really frustrated me. It's like that Nick learned more in the end than Jonathan did. And I did not expect that, and it was so anticlimactic. I could not tell at one point in the movie what the climax was. So yeah, I mean, narrative was clever, and De Niro it was solid despite the fact that his character doesn't go through any big changes. Dano was great as always, and there's also really good supporting work from Julianne Moore as Nick's mother, who's shown in flashbacks, and yeah, she has really good work. So does two actors who I haven't seen in a while, Lily Taylor, who was kind of an up-and-coming actress in the 1990s, and she was in Ransom and High Fidelity, and Wes Studi, who's the main antagonist in Last of the Mohicans. They do well in their supporting work. So yeah, I mean, due to the supporting work and Dano's performance, and like I said, some clever narration, I would probably give this movie, I'm going to be generous and give it a bare recommendation of a 3 out of 5. Let's see, tune in over the weekend. I am going to be I keep thinking I'm going to say interview. No. I am going to review Matthew McConaughey's hyped NC-17 rated crime thriller, Killer Joe. Until then.